Well, I think that from the get-go, the government kind of killed this credibility when they couldn't decide whether or not a mask was effective or not. And then they
Right.
come around and talk about, oh, well, the only reason we said that because we was trying to protect doctors. If you literally wear a dirty bandana over your face, you're going to be protected somewhat from the virus. So I think
Yeah.
that narrative
Yeah,
that they
that's a huge
push,
inconsistency. Yeah.
yeah, I think they really killed their credibility from the get go, and I think that's kind of why we're at with these viruses in the first place because people just didn't believe the government and they didn't buy the narrative, and I think that's how the virus ultimately became political in the first place. It's just the inconsistency from which I mean, again, to be quite honest with you, Trump contributed to that inconsistency,
The
but
the misinformation crisis. How did Trump contribute?
well, Trump contributed because he, called it a hoax, and basically Trump didn't take it as seriously as he should.
Well, the interesting thing about it is I think Trump started to take it seriously once he realized that the Democratic governors and mayors were starting to, and the media was starting to push this narrative so hard about the virus is so bad, and people didn't know either way about how bad it was going to be or not, that he had to hop on board
Yeah, but I
eventually.
think
But
it would have
again,
been smart from the get go. I think it would have been smart from the get go. And we've talked about this. I think it would have been smart from the get go if Trump would have just been like, "Hey, manga mask guys, do
well,
your part."
basically, he banned travel to China. He banned travel to Europe. He had to shut the economy down because, again, remember, it's not a unilateral decision. Shutdowns carry vast consequences. Mm, Arguably, from what we've seen, the lockdowns have been more consequential than the virus itself at this point. So all those things, and then the only thing was the mask thing, which again, now we're going to go into mask efficacy. I think the CDC has come out with multiple studies stating that masks are not effective against influenza-like viruses, but you have psychology professors from prestigious universities trying to chip in and say that masks work,
Well,
that masks
I
are
look at it like
effective.
this. I'm not a scientist.
Liberal professors,
I
yeah.
don't,
So
I
it's
don't
like,
get into, I
and
don't.
at first they said, you literally began that by saying that at first the CDC came out and said the
Yeah,
mask didn't work. And they tried to say that, oh, that was just so that we didn't run out of masks
yeah.
for
I'm
the
gonna be
medical
honest with you. I'm
profession,
gonna be
which
honest with
was
you. I'm gonna be
bullshit.
honest with you. My friend that was a doctor, I asked him at the beginning of this. I was like, what do masks do? He was like, they really don't do nothing. And like he said that. And I'm not saying again, I don't really want to get into the debate whether or not masks work or not. The
Yeah.
way I look at masks is I look at it like this. Best case scenario, they help. Worst case scenario, they're harmless. That's my stance on it. I just felt like Trump missed an opportunity to make the mask thing less political and also help the economic situation because if you mandate again, I do
I
have a
don't
problem with
know if
government.
they're
Hold on,
less
hold on.
harmless because they do cut off some oxygen
Yeah,
supply,
yeah,
but
but it's dude, you're not passing out from wearing a mask, bro. But anyways, all I'm
mm,
saying is, all
I
I'm
don't know.
saying is, okay, I'm not gonna get into that. All I'm saying is that at the very least, all I'm saying is that if Trump would have been more encouraging of people to wear the mask, it would have become less political. And I think he also could have used that as a means to keep the economy open because he could have said, listen, let's keep everything open.
Oh, I see what you're saying. So kind of outsmart the Democrats at their own
Yes,
game.
yes,
I see.
yes. Yes.
Oh, okay.
Yes. He
I see
screwed
what you're
himself
saying.
by going against
Yeah.
masks because now if people don't want to wear masks, and this is why leadership matters, right? Leadership matters. When people don't want to wear the mask because the president is basically not for it, then what happens is that if people keep getting a disease
Now
because
you've
people
given
aren't
the
wearing masks,
Democrats. Now you've given
now you're
the
giving them
Democrats
ammunition.
ammo.
Exactly. You're giving them ammunition to use against you to shut down the economy, which is ultimately really what's going to hurt you. That's really
Exactly.
what's going to hurt you. At the end of the day, if you push for the mask, and if again, like I said, worst case scenario is harmless. Oh, you have some little breathing problems, whatever, right? You don't have to wear it that long.
Mm-hmm.
But worst case scenario, low inconvenience wearing a mask. Best case scenario, it does stop the spread of the disease, and now you can keep the economy open.
So you're
Now
saying
it's not a
him
political issue
him
anymore.
him him doing that would have like made it so the Democrats would have basically no dirt on him or
Yes,
whatsoever, or like
yes,
no potential
well,
dirt
they
or
would
whatever.
have found something. They gonna
Yeah,
find.
yeah,
They
yeah,
probably
yeah,
would have came.
yeah.
Knowing the Democrats, they probably would have said masks don't work. They probably would have started saying
and
masks
they
don't
and they
work.
probably would highlight all the people who died from suffocating or
Yeah,
passing out fast.
Yeah, they probably started pulling up all types of studies talking about how masks don't work and Trump's an authoritarian for requiring masks. That's probably what they would have did. But
I'm glad you caught that. Yeah, of
but
course.
but
Yes.
but I think that in hindsight, I think that if he did drop the ball on the mask thing, because I think he could have used that as a political tool to keep the economy open for longer. Because you see, that's what the phase we're at in right now. The economies are basically open for the most part, but the mask mandate is in place and the social distancing rules are in place. I think that's something that we could have done from the get-go instead of having that full shutdown if he would have been on board with masks.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Or more supportive of masks, put it that way. Because I
Mm-hmm.
don't think he's necessarily against it. He just wasn't necessarily supportive of it, and that made it more political than it should have been.
I think it was a lot easier for the Democrats to make this political with Trump not taking it that seriously at first, because now they can just basically, like what they're doing with police brutality, highlight all the deaths and all the virus is so terrible. And they just say Trump didn't do anything, and they just make it look like Trump just didn't care about people dying, which is essentially what they're doing. I've highlighted how multiple things have killed way more people than this virus has. And again, you got to remember, a lot of these stats are botched, with people who are infected with corona and get hit by a bus or shot in the head, and corona killed them. So don't disregard that either. And then on top of that, most people dying have comorbidities. It's only 6% of people, for whatever reason, they die from corona itself. Here, at least here in the U.S., which is around 10, 11,000 people now, over the course of March till now, what, five and a half, almost 6 months now? Well, no, I mean, no, not even, because that was the beginning of the lockdown. That was a shutdown. We started getting cases what, in January, February, towards the beginning of the year, right? No, right, something like that.
I think we started getting our first cases around January, February. Because I remember it showing up in like San Francisco or something like that, like a
Yeah, it was
case.
like like around 8, 7 months, almost over half a year later, 10,000 people in the whole country, out of a country of 350 million, die from this thing, from God knows whatever, actually, maybe they're just, those same people who would die from the flu because they have an overactive immune system that causes more harm than good whenever the immune system is trying to fend off or fight off an invasive pathogen. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like their immune system goes haywire trying to fight it off, and with that, that's what actually causes them to die rather than the virus itself. Because you gotta remember, all that sickness you experience, sneezing, coughing, headache, that's all your body just reacting to try to purge the virus, to try to purge it out, whether it's viral infection, bacterial infection, So, those are just things to take into account, to consider whenever you're considering any type of disease or infection, or any type of germ.
Yeah. I think Trump probably was ultimately right
Yeah.
about how bullshit this virus is, but that's not how politics work. Politics is not about
Say,
who's right and who's wrong.
you're saying he should have been smarter about knowing what the Democrats,
Yeah.
about what kind of gymnastics, like psychological gymnastics, the Democrats could have pulled, and been smarter about it, so that the
Yeah,
Democrats would literally have no
Trump.
dirt
I'm gonna
on
tell you, that's probably Trump's biggest weakness. Trump's biggest weakness is that he doesn't have political experience, so he doesn't know how to play the game, and I think that really
them. At
screws him
times,
over
yeah, yeah,
because
sometimes.
he can't get as much stuff that he could that he would be getting done because he doesn't have the political experience, and I think
But
that
he's
really holds
but
him
he's been
back.
getting a lot done. But he's been getting a lot done, nevertheless.
Yeah, nevertheless, but I'm just saying I think he could do a lot more, and he have a lot less pushback if he knew how to actually play the game.
Well, do
Because
you
I
think?
really do
No,
I
go
really,
ahead.
I really do believe that we could have kept the economy open had he embraced the mask.
Mm-hmm.
Because I
Mm-hmm.
think that's the political back and forth.
But then, like you said, Trump. They would have said Trump's authoritarian by opposing masks and stuff. They
Maybe,
would have called.
maybe. I mean, I'm just saying,
They would
maybe.
have called him. They would have called him a dictator. But so, that brings up another interesting point. So, do you think Trump has developed from over the past 4 years to where he'll be even be able to get even more stuff done now that he's quote unquote learned how to play the game a little bit, and if
I'm
he
not
wins
sure if
this?
he's actually. I don't think Trump cares to learn the game, honestly. Because I just think, again, I think that's evidenced by the way this whole virus thing went down. I just think that at this point, Trump knows that for whatever reason, the corporations, the media, and the politicians are all against Trump, right? Like and when the corporations and the establishment against you, there's really nothing you can do, right? There's nothing you can do. And
so you're saying Trump's essentially trying to do the next to the impossible.
I mean, yeah, at this point, you see what is happening, bro. You see
All
what's happening in this country.
all these things that they're trying to do to get rid of him.
Yeah,
like
a lot
you
of
said,
this is just to
like
try to get rid of Trump.
Like, to put it in a nutshell, like you said, they're throwing the kitchen sink at him.
Yeah, throwing the kitchen sink. And like I said, I mean, yes, nobody's saying that the Democrats created the virus to get rid of Trump. No, that's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is that because it's a global virus, obviously, right? So it'd be hard to the Democrats manufacture a global virus to get rid of Trump. Wow, that would be a hell of a feat to pull off. But
they were opportunistic.
Yes, they were opportunistic about the virus, and again, a part of the politicalization of it was trying to make it seem like everything the president does is not in the best interest of public health.
And anything that he does do is hurting people, or basically just to put it more generally.
Because to be quite honest,
yeah.
Because to be quite honest, and sorry to cut you off, but to be quite honest, the way Trump when he actually started taking the virus seriously, the way Trump actually handled it is beautiful. Right? Like he did everything that he could possibly do. I mean, we've had more like when he goes out and says he gets criticized for bragging about the amount of tests that we have. He's like,
and the amount of ventilators and all that stuff. Yeah. Like
he's like, yo, we have more deaths and more cases because we literally have more tests. Right? And if this virus is as contagious as the liberal media wants you to believe that it is, that makes perfect sense.
Maybe tens of millions of people in the U.S. have been infected by now.
Exactly. And when you have more tests and you can find that out and you discover that, yes, you're going to have better numbers, right? I mean, not better numbers. You're going to have worse numbers.
Higher
numbers. You're going to have higher numbers. Yeah. So higher numbers don't necessarily mean a bad response.
Yeah, don't necessarily mean that we have it any worse than other places.
It doesn't. No, it doesn't at all. It doesn't at all. And that's
higher numbers means we have more transparency, which is
actually
good.
Exactly. Higher numbers mean we have transparency to a certain extent.
Yeah.
But
as much as we practically can, because you can't test everybody who has, because not everyone under the sun who has a headache or a cough is going to go to the hospital and get tested. Yeah.
Yeah, I think we had one of the lowest test to death rates or something like that I saw a chart. Comparing to other countries, how many tests they have versus how many deaths they had. I mean, we've tested
as a proportion, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we've tested so many people. It's like, I mean, I don't know what else you want the president to do, right? Like that's what the president. You asked for the president to be responsible and to take it serious, and when he took it serious, again, he just signed a deal with Abbott Laboratories, the Trump administration, to have $5 tests that come back in 24 hours. Mm-hmm. That's going to literally double our testing capacity. Mm-hmm. What else did you want the president to do? Mm-hmm. Like, what else can you ask the president to do? I mean,
they're trying to hold the system to unattainable, ridiculous standards and use that as ammunition to say we need to change. That's literally what it is.
But that's just par for the course.
But same thing with police brutality. Oh, police only kill around 25 unarmed black men a year, but that's so terrible. We need to get it down to 5 or 0 that we need to change police. Like it's unattainable goals, using that as a straw man to justify changing the whole thing. Literally, that's what they're trying to do. They're trying to overload the system.